Welcome, everybody, to the first ever episode of the Off-Road Insiders podcast. I'm Nate, and I'm joined tonight by...
Hey, I'm Tammy, aka Jeep Mama. Some of you might know me as Jeep Mama on the internet.
On the interwebs.
The interwebs, yes. We haven't seen each other in like a long time. Nate and I know each other from way back when.
Yeah, exactly. My gosh, what is it? 4 or 5 years?
Oh, I think it's longer.
I guess we can. It might be longer than that. When was that?
Oh, was that about 16 or 17? 2016 or 17?
My gosh, there's this blurry section in my brain that we might all remember as a pandemic, like yes. Time shifted.
Yes, you gotta add. Yes, yeah.
The lost years.
BC before COVID. Yes.
So what have you been up to lately, Tammy?
Oh gosh, I've been up to a lot, but just this past 2 weekends ago, I was on the Oregon Trail, part of the trail here in Wyoming, just 40 miles of it, because the Oregon Trail is like 2,170 miles across the west. So we did a little overland trip there, and it was so much fun, except it was super muddy. I think we're getting all the rain here in Wyoming.
Yeah, we're not getting it here. Or we did this week, but before that, it's just been, PA has been like a desert.
Yeah, and we're like the muddy New Jersey state parks.
Yeah,
here.
Right. It's weird.
Yeah. So that's where I live now in Wyoming. Some folks remember me from being in Maryland or Colorado, but I'm in Wyoming now. So, but anyway, it was a great trip. Met some great people. I'm really enjoying overlanding. It's a lot of fun camping and just like chilling on the trails, easy trails, not serious rock crawling.
Yeah, I just today watched a video from. Are you familiar with Dirt Lifestyle?
Yes. Yep.
He's the other YouTuber named Nate.
Nate, yes.
He had gone on a Power Stop sponsored thing, I think it was, where they were also doing. He called it the Oregon BDR. I don't know anything about trails on that side of the country, so I don't know exactly what that is and how it differs from where you were. He didn't mention it as the Oregon Trail. I think you were on like the classic Oregon Trail, right? Like.
Right, the one the pioneers did in the 1840s.
He did say, because they were making jokes about the old Oregon Trail video game that kids used to play.
Everybody's making. I never played that. I guess that was computers.
I think it depends on when you were a kid in elementary school, because that was like an old Apple II game that, like, you had to be the right age at the right time. It happened to be like mid 80s. That's when I was in elementary school. I don't know when you were in elementary school.
Way
before that.
Way before that.
Yeah. Oregon Backcountry Discovery Route. It's in the comments there. Here, if we look at the chat. Sorry guys, we're still getting used to StreamYard. It doesn't show in here. I thought it would show in here. It doesn't.
Huh.
I guess we'll just have to watch the YouTube chat.
YouTube channel. Yeah.
So anyway, but it was a neat video. That was the point. It was a neat video, and he had a similar sentiment. He's like, get out there, do this stuff while you can, right? Not in like a people are coming to steal it from us thing, but in a like life's only so short, right? So
right.
Get out there and do it.
Just do it. Yeah, and you never know when you're going to be taken away from this life, and it is also true that there are a lot of people who oppose our sport. Sorry, I just drank and then it. Yes, you never know when land could be taken away. At least for our type of recreation, maybe you can still hike it, maybe you can still take a mountain bike, but motorized traffic is getting less and less popular, and I kind of hate that. And to be honest, like, we're here tonight to give introductions and talk about the show. We'll get into more about the show in a bit, but basically, I'm of the opinion that we should be trying to teach people to use the land well, right? Because we want to save it. We want to be able to enjoy it. We want to have our kids enjoy it, our kids enjoy it, and
Right.
we need to be good stewards of the land so we can enjoy these places. You would be amazed. Some of these places are amazing, and you learn a lot from history, how the pioneers trekked our land, and it's just something that we need to be good stewards of. And I feel like you and I both are on that same page,
Right.
and we're to share our experience and what we've learned to help others do it properly.
Right. Right. So, yeah, I also just last weekend had a little bit of a trip. We went out to, so as I mentioned, I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm on the east side of Pennsylvania. Further to the west side of Pennsylvania, I don't know if that's west. I'm pointing that way, like it's west. Maybe I think west is that way. But we went out to Bantam, the Heritage Jeep Festival, which was a really fun time. I got to meet, do you know, he goes by Daddy Jeep? Have you seen that YouTube channel? He's a smaller channel. I got to meet him out there. That was kind of fun. But yeah, we went out last year.
Oh, maybe I do know him. I think I do. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
We went out last year, and my wife was in a wheelchair at the time because she had foot surgery last year, and it really, like, we made the best of it. But it's in basically, it's not quite a fairground, but if I say it's in a fairground, you'll kind of get the right picture. It's not even terrain. All the walkways are like gravel, right? And pushing a wheelchair around that was not fun.
Tough.
So we decided to go back this year. And this year I had the tow rig and the trailer working, where last year I had some issues with the tow rig and we couldn't tow my Jeep out. I really wanted to get my Jeep out there because they have trails to run. They have a playground. Were you ever at Bantam? I forget if you were when you were still on this coast.
No, I never did go. It always fell on like the last weekend of school, or I don't know, something with school.
Yeah. The kids finished school that Friday. Like, luckily my kids do online school. So, and since it was the last day, they didn't have much to do anyway. All we really had to do was log them in the morning. So they got attendance, and then we were able to hop in the car and go. But yeah, it's right at the end of school. It also happens to always fall right around my youngest daughter's birthday weekend. So, we never really got to go. And the last year we decided we're going to go. And then now we went this year, and everybody had fun. So we may make it a yearly pilgrimage out to the, it's really neat because if you're not familiar, this was basically the birthplace of the Jeep. The Bantam Car Company, which were, I believe, the first patent owners of the Jeep for the war, right? Or they were awarded the contract or whatever.
It was Bantam, Willis, Overland, and Ford Motor Company. The three of them submitted stuff, and it was a combination of all of them. But I think, from what I gather, most of the Bantam designs was in the Jeep.
Yeah, but the way I understood it was that Bantam won, but then the government said, okay, but these other car companies, we need a bunch of these things, so they're going to make them too.
Manufacture, right. But they used a combination of all three designs, but Bantam's design was the most. But they could not manufacture as many as the government wanted. So Willis, Overland, and Ford did the manufacturing.
Right. But so they have, I guess, the initial production of the Bantam Jeep. There were 2,600 of them produced, and they have 2 of them there on display.
Wow!
And it was pretty cool, right? They have this like handcrafted and welded grill that is these barred slats, and that's how you can tell like that first run versus the produced runs. The produced ones have the stamped grill that we're all familiar with now, like you see on the World War II military Jeeps, right? But it was just really neat. They have 2 of them there that you can go and you can see, and you can see that you can't like hop in them or anything. That'd be awesome, but
take it on the trails for
Gotta take it for a little drive. Right. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's funny every year. In fact, last year the guys from the Northwest Jeepcast had come to Bantam as part of their Wheel in America thing, and I met up with them last year, right? Which is part of the reason we wanted to go last year. This year, I had two separate friends that were both going to Bantam. So we were like, one of them's from New Jersey, the other one's from the other side of PA. So we're all in Bantam. Didn't see each other the whole trip.
Oh, that's
it was always like
tons of people there.
Yeah, it was always like, okay, I'm over here. Let's meet up for lunch. Oh, we're over here now. We went to that thing. We're off doing this thing. Didn't get to see each other the whole weekend.
Oh, bummer.
But it was the same thing with the Garys, right? This is the only time they were going to be coming to PA, as far as I know, right?
Right.
So the whole weekend, I'm like, hey, we're here. Where are you guys at? Oh, we're on the trails now. Oh, okay. Well, we'll meet up later. Later comes. Hey, how about now? Oh, the whole weekend. It turned out Sunday last year, Sunday was supposed to downpour, and everyone's like, okay, we're just going to go home. Well, we all got up in the morning and it wasn't raining. So both them and us decided we're going to go back to the campground, really. And since we were there, I just wrote them like, hey, did you guys leave? No, we didn't. So then we met up and we actually got lunch together. So I actually finally got to see them at Bantam last year.
You kind of have to pre-plan.
Yeah, there's so much to do there that I can understand why it's like that, right? Like there's a Bantam invasion where we all go down, or where we all go down to Butler, which is where the factory was, and you can park on the street, and they have like a street fair. There's that. There's the playground there. There's some trails there. There's like a safari that you can go drive your Jeep through, which we were going to do this year, and then we didn't get to because of timing. But there's a whole bunch to do, and then not to mention all the exhibits, the vendors. There's a swap meet. There's a little almost museum that they set up inside of like a almost a hangar, right?
Oh wow!
That's there on the lot where they have a whole bunch of classic Jeeps and stuff. Yeah, I can send you pictures. It's pretty cool, but it was fun. It was fun to get out there again. I did the whole Jeep playground in my little LJ.
That little LJ is amazing. I wheeled Nate at AOAA, and he was in front of me on this big rocky. I can't remember what it was. And that thing is impressive, but it does driving skills.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's again, right. I've been doing this for a while, and we'll get into our backgrounds in a second. But the playground, they have a mud pit, which isn't really my thing, but I did it because the kids wanted to do it. So it wasn't bad because, again, it's so dry in PA. The mud pit wasn't as muddy as they were like hosing it down to try to get it muddy enough. There was a mud pit. There's a course that's just dirt that they say anybody can do. There's one that's like obstacles, like a log bridge and stuff like that, which again, I think is rated for just about any Jeep. And then there's 2 levels of like challenging courses, right? Mm-hmm. And the lower one says if you're on up to a 33-inch tire or minimum 33-inch tire, you can do this one. And then the middle one is if you're in a 4-door Jeep, you have to have 35s or more. If you're in a 2-door Jeep, and they just say short wheelbase versus long wheelbase, you have to have 33s or more, right? And I roll up and I'm like, I'm kind of in the middle. Should I try this or not? Right? And they're like, they look at me, they look at the Jeep, they look at me, they go, do you have a locker? Like, no, I have a limited slip. And he goes, you can try.
And you probably did it.
I was like, this doesn't inspire confidence. But I did it. I got through it.
I had no doubts. I have no doubts.
And they have people there spotting that have spotted 100 vehicles through the thing. So they know exactly how to get you through it. But yeah, I got from the one, I walked up and the spotter's waiting for me and I'm just walking through and he goes, this isn't your first rodeo, is it? I'm like, nope.
Or my 10th. So just real quick, somebody just asked, what does SWB mean? And I think I got it right. Short wheelbase, right?
Yes, it does.
Yes, I got it right.
Sorry, the kids are like announcing things through the house on our home system here. I'm trying to mute that out. Anyway, yes, SWB is short wheelbase. Well, here, I guess this is a great transition. We can talk.
Tell us who you are, Nate.
You can give us some background. So SWB Crawler. When I first set up my first Jeep related website, it was in the era where Chrysler at the time was hunting down people that were taking their trademark. So if you did anything with the word Jeep in it or even references to Jeep, they would say, nope, you can't do that. And they would actually sue you or make you take down your website.
Wow.
So when I set up my website, I was trying to think of creative ways to say Jeep without saying Jeep, right? And at the time, there were only a handful of short wheelbase off-road vehicles. There was like the Suzuki Samurai, there was the Jeep, and then there were a couple of older things like Land Cruisers and stuff that weren't quite as popular in the US. So I thought, oh, short wheelbase crawler, that'll send the message, right? And then, of course, Jeep comes out with a four-door Jeep, which is decidedly not short wheelbase. Totally ruining my whole tricky naming convention. So anyway, that's where the name came from. But I guess that's a little too far ahead in the story. I'm going to go back a little bit further as to who I am, why it is that I do the things that I do in this industry. So I'm Nate. I've been wheeling, or I've owned a Jeep, I should say. Actually, we'll go back even a little further than that. I've been a Jeep enthusiast probably since high school.
Wow.
But that was, if you caught the references earlier to the Oregon Trail, that was the mid to late 90s, right? The YJ was the Jeep at the time. I wanted one in the worst way. When I got my license, my parents, I should say my dad, who grew up when the classic CJ was the Jeep that was on the road, and those things were known to be unsafe. So he wouldn't let me get a Jeep, right? So I ended up with like a Chevy Blazer or something. Yes, it was an S10 Blazer. And like the moment I got it, I started off-roading with it and quickly found its limitations and quickly realized how expensive it was to build one of those things. And then I went to college and I was carpooling with a guy who owned a YJ, and that was it. I sold the Blazer. I got a YJ because now I was over 18. My dad didn't get a say in it anymore.
Sorry,
I've owned a Jeep. I've owned a Jeep ever since. There was a short span where I had an XJ. Other than that, I've had a Wrangler ever since. Right, I had an XJ for like 4 years, I think, 3 years, something like that. But I've had, let me think, 3 YJs, one of which didn't have a drivetrain in it, so I don't know if that counts. That never left my garage.
It counts. It counts.
Yeah, I've had, between my wife and I, we've had 3 JKs, a 2-door and 2 4-doors. She has a 4-door now. I have an LJ now, and then I had that XJ for a couple years. I had a 2-door JK that I was wheeling at one point, but I was afraid to wheel it. Not because it wasn't capable, because I owed too much money on it.
Oh yeah.
You might get that same feeling, Tammy, right? Yeah, it's
you hear that a lot.
I felt like I couldn't afford to both pay the payments and pay to fix it. So I traded that in on the LJ, and I've had the LJ for 8 years now, maybe 7. I think it was 2014. I got the LJ, and it's a 2005. So anyway, that's all the Jeeps I've owned. I work in IT, right? I don't actually work in the off-road industry. It's always been a passion, and I've kind of turned it into a side hustle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where, I make content, I make a little bit of money on it, but my bread and butter comes from my day job, which I have a very long career in systems administration. And because I'm also passionate about that, like I'm passionate about just about everything I get involved in, it seems, as a hobby, I stood up my own website, right? This is how I learn things sometimes, right? I'll stand up my own website, figure out how it works. And these things never seem to go away, right? So I turned it into a blog and a tech site. That's where SWB Crawler came from.
Say that 3 times real fast.
Next time I pick a name, I'm going to make it easier to say.
Right. You could be Jeep Dad.
Right. It started as just like, oh, I did a thing. I'm going to share. Or I went on a trail. I'm going to share pictures of it. That kind of thing. And it just slowly turned into, nobody's writing articles about this thing, but I want to do that thing. So I'll figure out how to do that thing, and then I'll make an article about it. And then when people started moving from sort of the text space into video, I decided to start up a YouTube channel, which is where the SWB Crawler YouTube channel came from. It's basically just like, it's supposed to go in tandem with my website. In fact, a lot of the content you find on my YouTube channel you'll also find written about on swbcrawler.com. And then I decided I'm going to branch that out into like t-shirts and stuff. So I have like funny t-shirts or branded stuff for the YouTube channel that you can go to swbcrawler.com and you can buy. Like, I've got a t-shirt that has a broken Jeep on it and it says nothing good happens after 3 p.m. Because I thought that was funny, right? Like, that's a thing that's trail guides say to each other, right? Like, oh, one more trail. Oh, crap. Now it's midnight and we got a broken Jeep. You know, I just made one that has a compass rose. And on the front, on the top, it says bump it. On the bottom, it says brake. And on the left and right, it says driver and passenger. It's supposed to be a spotter t-shirt, right?
Right.
So anyway, I think they're funny. Not a lot of people buy them, but I'm going to keep making them because I think they're funny.
And you know what? Somebody will come across it and like, oh, this is a really cool shirt. You should
I've had lots of people say they're funny and they like them, but then they don't follow through and buy them. So I don't know. Maybe they're just humor.
You need to put those. You need to get a Pinterest channel and put them on Pinterest because that's where people go to find stuff.
Okay. So, one more thing to manage.
But you could at least have at least one board, my favorite t-shirts, and then people will find your t-shirts and maybe they'll want to buy them. Anyway,
I'll have to try that next.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're counting, that's like, I don't know, 25 years, 30 years that I've been having fun in this sport. Right. And that's, you know, everything from like wheeling on old strip mines that we weren't supposed to be in to trail guiding for the Jeep Jamboree. Right. So I do. And it's all about wanting to share what I've learned. Right. So
where do you usually wheel?
Usually up here in Pennsylvania at AOAA. Okay. I used to love the old Paragon Adventure Park. That got taken away from us because the landowner decided he wanted to build an airport and he couldn't get zoning for the airport. So now it just sits there empty. A lot of people trespass and still wheel on it, but I've outgrown that phase of wheeling and I generally disagree with it. So I don't do that anymore. But AOAA and Roush Creek are kind of the two places that I wheel most.
And AOAA is built on an old.
Yep, that's old.
Reclaiming an old mine area.
That's old coal company land. Maybe we'll have to try to get Dave Forsey on to talk about the park sometime.
Right, that would be a good
I bet
idea.
He'd love to. He loves to talk.
And you used to work with Kyle too, and you would lead trail rides.
Yep. Yeah. Up until it might be 2 years ago now, I stopped doing it, but that was because my mother-in-law was sick, and it got to the point where every time he asked me to guide, I'd be like, "Yeah, I can probably do that," and then something would happen, and then I'd have to back out. That happened twice, and I finally told him, "I'm like, look, I just can't. I can't commit the time right now." I'm like, just put me on some kind of a hold list or whatever, and I'll let you know when life settles out. And I just never really went back to it. He'd probably take me back, I guess, if I asked him. But
because you know those trails like the back of your hand.
Yeah. Last year the park changed a bit, so I have some relearning to do because last year was also the year that my mother-in-law was sick, so I didn't get to wheel as much. But yeah, it's definitely like the core of the park. You can drop me just about anywhere in there and I'll be able to find the way back out.
And we've wheeled together on a trail ride that one time at AOA with Chris, CPO.
2017, I think it was now.
Yeah.
That is some time ago, isn't it?
Yeah. Are you sure? Are you sure? There's a video
right.
on my YouTube channel, and I'll share it one of these days with you guys.
That was your first black trail, wasn't it?
Yes, the Black W Trail. That was intense.
Yeah.
But I think we've been at Roush Creek at the same time. I just don't think we wheeled together. I don't remember though now.
I remember meeting you at Roush Creek.
Yeah.
I forget why I was there. Maybe I was there for a guided
ride. I think so.
And you happened to be there for some other reason, and we just kind of like met up and said hi.
Hi, right.
That's when you were on JTS and I was contributing. So that's how we knew each other. We hadn't wheeled together before or anything at that point.
That's right. And for those of you who don't know, JTS is the Jeep Talk Show which is another podcast I used to be on. And actually, Nate and I were on at the same time. They brought Nate on because I wasn't technical enough. Nate had extreme Wrangler talk, and I was doing Wrangler talk. Nate was a little bit more techie at the time than I was. Probably still is more techie than I am. I'm slowly learning. But we were on that podcast together for a short stint, and then you had enough and you left, and eventually,
he was. I don't want to badmouth the guy, but he's difficult to make content for. I'll put it that way. He's very particular about the content that ends up on the show. So yeah, he would put these like ridiculous constraints on my recordings, and then I would try to meet them, and then he would change them. And that bothers me before, like more than anything, that I give you a thing and then you change it.
Yep.
But again, it's his show, whatever. But yeah.
It is what it is. That's why we're doing our own show now.
Exactly. I'll start my own podcast.
we can do whatever we want, however we want, and however long we want, or short.
Right.
So anyway, anything else you got?
No, I mean we should probably keep it rolling. So let's see who's Tammy. Does anyone not know Tammy?
Yeah. So hey, I'm Tammy, aka Jeep Mama. I was a stay-at-home mom for years and years, and life just started passing me by, and my kids got older, and I'm like, gosh, what am I going to do with my life? And I kind of was going through this, I don't know, little midlife crisis, so to speak. I'm like, I got to get rid of my minivan. So I'm like, I want that Jeep that this scout dad had, because the kids were having a blast in it. So we went to the Jeep dealer, and I'm like, I want that Jeep because you can take the top down. And the guy goes, well, do you want the Sahara, the Sport, or the Rubicon? And I'm like, I don't know, what's the difference? And he was explaining the different models. And as soon as he said the Rubicon has an off-road package, I'm like, oh, forget that. I'll never go off-roading. I don't even know what off-roading is. And so I bought this Jeep, and my friend goes, you should do a blog. And I'm like, what's a blog? And she's like, oh, where you write? And I'm like, what am I going to blog about? And she's like, you should write about being a Jeep mom now that you have a Jeep. So I'm like, okay, I had no idea what I was doing. And I just started, oh, I just washed my Jeep today. Oh, look, and I brought floor mats for my Jeep. And I just started, and it slowly evolved. And
that's how it starts.
Yes.
Floor mats, steering wheel covers.
Yep. So the Jeep dad, who I bought the Jeep because of, this Jeep dad had a Sport. He's like, we really should take this class. I found this class up at Roush Creek, and he never did go, but I did. And it was with Kyle, who does off-road consulting. And I booked a private class with him because I had no idea how to even put it into four-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Kyle took me out on the trails at Roush Creek. It was just him and I was immediately hooked. That next, actually, so I was posting on Facebook about being a Jeep mom, and this other Jeep mom in Pennsylvania, she's like, oh, you should go to this women's wheeling event. And that was the second year they had the women's wheeling event at Roush Creek. And these women were amazing. Nancy and Penny and Susan and Christy. They all welcomed me into this family, and we started this women's wheeling event. And then I joined a Jeep group up there, and I just started going to more and more and more Jeep events up there at Roush Creek and meeting people. And then I would share my videos to my family on this thing called YouTube, because that's what my nieces said, you should go on YouTube and share your videos. And so I just would throw up these raw videos of me on my Jeep, and it just started snowballing. And then I'm like meeting all these other Jeepers all over the country. Who knew that there was this community?
Yeah.
And
that's really like no other, well, very few other vehicles come with a built-in community.
Right.
The Jeep Wrangler's one of them.
Right. And I was like flabbergasted at all these people and all these different Jeeps, and with big, huge tires and lights and fancy everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I was just overwhelmed. And I'm like, I want to wheel the Rubicon Trail one day. And so I decided I cannot build a Jeep to the specifications that I would want to wheel the Rubicon Trail. So a year later, I traded my Sahara, which was my first Jeep, a 4-door Sahara, with the Rubicon, because that has all the built-in, the transfer case and um, the axles and
The
all the stuff,
lockers
the
and
lockers and the sway bar.
the
Just
low ratio, the sway bar.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then that wasn't enough. So I gotta lift my Jeep. So I lifted my Jeep on 35s and a 3.5-inch lift. And, I was all of a sudden, I'm like, I need to go more than just Roush Creek. So I went to AOAA. I met this group in the Carolinas, and I went to Uwharrie Off Road Park. I went to some places in Virginia, and I'm like, God, that's just isn't enough. And all of a sudden, I met this guy online on Facebook, and he's like telling me about this TAT trail, which, by the way, is not really what you think it is. And he's like, we should do this trip together. And I'm like, okay. So I got all these sponsors and raised all this money, and we did this month-long trip. Meanwhile, backtrack a few years, my personal life, we having issues in my marriage. And when I got back from this trip, it's like, okay, it's time for us to separate and get divorced. And personal decisions, I decided, you know what, it's time for me to leave. And this Neil, who I met online, said, you should come out to Colorado and we can flip Jeeps and find these old Jeeps and flip them. And I talked with my kids and the best interest of my kids and myself. It was time for me to move on. And I headed out to Colorado and had this amazing adventure. And I got to wheel all these amazing places in Kingman, Arizona, Moab, and the Rubicon Trail. I did the Rubicon Trail. I took my kids on the Rubicon Trail, and I wheeled in the Colorado mountains, the San Juans, and we flipped Jeeps. I got to learn about the DJ3A, the CJ7, the YJ, and Leaf Springs, and doing an SOA, and it just kept expanding. And I started doing videos on how-tos and installs, and my YouTube channel kind of, it wasn't just my raw videos of me YouTubing. And it was an awesome thing. I was living in a camper, simplified my life. I didn't live in a house. We lived in a camper in a campground along the Rio Grande River in Colorado. And, it was really good, and found out he wasn't who I thought he was. And it was time for me to escape Colorado and to leave that relationship, which, by the way, if you ever want to get the in-depth look at that, I have a book about that experience on Amazon. It's Emotional Vampire: Escaping the Relationship of Escaping a Toxic Relationship. So then I went to Minnesota, gathered myself. I was living with my sister, regrouping, and a friend of mine who happened to wheel with me in Colorado was living in Cheyenne. And he's like, you need to get out of Minnesota. There's nothing there for you. It's just lakes. You can't really take your Jeep in a lake unless it's in the wintertime.
I mean, you could.
Right.
You ever see those big flotation tires?
Yeah. So he's like, come out here to Cheyenne. You're close to the Rocky Mountains. I'm 10 minutes from the Colorado border. We have the Grand Tetons, the Bighorns, and there's a Jeep club here. And there's this really great Jeep company here. Maybe you can go there and maybe you can get a job there. So once again, I just put everything in my Jeep, all I could fit in my Jeep, and I came out here to Cheyenne, and here I am. I'm working for TNT Customs right here. They're a Jeep manufacturing aftermarket parts company. For those of you who don't know, they also have an auto repair shop. We also do bed lining and truck accessories. So I'm director of sales and marketing and doing all the things I love. I do their social media. I market for them. I do their YouTube channel. And it's awesome. I go wheeling here in Colorado still. I just did the Oregon Trail, and there's just so many more adventures I have to go on. So it's been a rocky a rocky journey for sure.
Definitely a more involved story than mine.
Well, you make better life choices than me.
Well, I'm the sort of guy who makes roots and sticks there. I
Right.
don't think I could imagine not. I mean, like you've really gone out there, right? Like you've been out
It,
on that limb that I think
yes,
I'd be afraid to be out on it. And
it was
maybe you were
hard.
too. I don't know, but
Oh, it was very scary. Um, if I hadn't done that, I'd be working at 7-Eleven in Maryland, barely surviving,
yeah, I
you
remember you
know?
said you were having trouble finding like
Oh,
sort of restarting your career after being a stay-at-home mom for so long.
yeah.
And
When
my
you're
wife's kind of facing the same thing. She's been a stay-at-home mom since our first kid was born, and
it,
she would like to do a thing to make money, but she has no idea what at this point because
right,
just like the career that she left, she didn't really love anyway,
right.
right? And yeah, so
It's hard to get back in there, especially when you have this hole in your resume
yeah,
because I guess you could put stay-at-home mom, but and the other thing is you get older and you're competing against younger kids, and these employers think these younger kids are better than you. And actually, one of the jobs I applied for in Minnesota was at a newspaper, and they had just did a big in-depth article on the older generation trying to get back into the workforce and how hard it is. And
yeah,
really, it shouldn't be, because we are better workers
yeah,
than the younger generation. And I did not want to go back into my old career, which was television news. I, I, it's disgusting now, the whole
yeah.
news, and
It
I did
really
not
kind
want
of
to be.
is.
I didn't want to be a part of
There's
that.
there's a select few that are still, I think, upholding standards, but most of
Right.
them are just. It's like YouTube. It's all about the shock value. It's all about getting people to watch. It doesn't really matter if it's
Exactly.
true.
Right. Exactly.
The truth part is like a secondary.
Right. Maybe. And I saw that happening when I was back in the news industry, back in when you were in high school, probably. Um, the late 80s, early 90s, I started to see it slowly getting, because it was all about if it bleeds, it leads, was our
Yeah.
saying.
Well, go watch the Weather Channel sometime, and you'll see that it's like 98% not about your weather. It's about the hurricane that's happening
Right. And
8
actually,
states away, and it's about yeah, how do
mo-
they draw you in?
and most of those hurricanes, I lived on the East Coast in Charleston, and I've covered many hurricanes. They're really not that dramatic. Some of them
Yeah.
are. There are
Oh
some
yeah.
that are,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
not every single one of them.
I have a coworker who lives down to well, a couple of them that live in Florida, but she actually endured a pretty nasty hurricane last year, and she's actually moving because of it. Because she said,
Yeah.
I'm done with this. This is just not.
Oh,
I don't want to live in a place where the weather threatens my life.
that there are some that will do that to you. I actually
Yeah,
went through Hurricane Hugo, my first year in Charleston, and they could be traumatic.
yeah, yeah.
So I wanted a quick oh shoot, I just got out of it. I was going to quick say hi to all the folks in the chat room.
Yep.
Um but
There's
maybe you can do it, cuz
there's a,
I accidentally X'd out of it.
yeah. There's a few people chatting. The TAT you mentioned earlier. That's the Trans American Trail, right?
Oh,
Did I get that
yes,
right?
correct.
Okay.
And that was
I threw that into the chat in case anybody was
oh,
curious.
yeah, and the Trans-America Trail was designed by a man back in the 70s who was a motorcycle rider.
Hmm.
And he wanted to have a path across the country on just dirt roads, scenic dirt roads for motorcyclists to take. And it's really geared towards them. But since then, a lot of those roads have been paved.
Hmm.
And a lot of those roads, as a Jeeper, you have to travel a lot more slowly than a motorcyclist. So it takes a very, very long time. So it was very unrealistic for us to do. So during my adventure, we kind of went off our plan and just did other things, and I ended up meeting some amazing people. We wheeled in Southern California, Kingman, Colorado, but I got to meet some great Jeepers, which that's the best thing about this community is the amazing people you meet.
Yeah, that is the cool thing about. I usually say the Jeep community, but really it's the off-road community. Yeah,
yes.
it's more than just the Jeep vehicle, because I know a lot of folks that may have started with a Jeep, they may have started with something else. I've long since outgrown that elitist attitude that you need to be in a Jeep to be in my wheeling group. I don't
Correct.
care. I've wheeled with guys in Lexuses. I've wheeled with guys in like Toyota Tacomas, right? I don't care. You bring a good attitude to the trail.
Right.
You treat things well. I'll wheel with you. I don't care what you're driving.
Right. Now that I've gotten more into being with TNT, when I first moved here, the second day I got to Cheyenne, they were doing this overland event with For Exploring, which is a sub company off of TNT, and it's Bob Levenhagen who runs TNT, Bob and Mary. He does For Exploring, which he puts together these week-long overland events. So I was lucky enough to get invited to go on that with a friend, and we went on the northern half of the Grand Canyon along the Arizona Strip, and there was a power wagon, there were gladiators, Jeeps, and even this overland event in the Oregon Trail, we had all sorts of vehicles, and they were pulling campers, and it's just people who love the outdoors, people who love going on trails, camping. We're all part of the same community. You don't have to have a Jeep.
Right.
You can have whatever vehicle gets you to where you need to go.
So speaking of community, I guess now is a great time to talk about how we want this show to basically flow, I guess, or the vision we have for the show. That's the word I'm looking for. I have, Tammy, do you have time for a very short history lesson? I promise it'll be relevant.
Go ahead. I love history.
All right. So the thing that we all enjoy and loosely call the internet, right? That's mainly a technology called the World Wide Web. Okay. The guy who invented the World Wide Web, his name was Tim Berners-Lee.
Oh, I thought it was Al Gore.
Nope. He had this vision for so I'm trying not to make this too techie, because I could definitely go techie on this if I really wanted to. The sort of the language that your computer talks when it's talking to the internet is called, it's the World Wide Web is the thing it's communicating with, right? The vision that this guy had for the World Wide Web is that it would be accessible to anybody, that anybody could, if they wanted to, stand up a website, right? And share their opinions or their information or whatever, right? He had this vision that the World Wide Web would be the information superhighway that everybody called it in the 90s, right? That anybody would be able to get onto the internet and share what they wanted to share through the thing called the World Wide Web. Now, that may have been a little unrealistic because there's a certain technical level that you need to be able to be fluent in to make a website. But the concept is there, right? And the very basis for what the World Wide Web is based on was based on that, right? Anybody should be able to do this. And because of that, the way the thing was written, the way the protocols were all written, if you want to do this, you can go stand up a web server, and that was another thing coming across my speaker. You can stand up a server and run your website. In the early days, what people did was they had this thing people who ran websites would just go online and they'd share what they're doing. They called it a weblog, right? Which is on the web, and it's a log of things that are going on. And it was basically just people that were passionate about a thing, wanted to share stuff and talk about what they were doing. that evolved into what we know today as blogs. So you and I got started in the same way, right?
Exactly.
Right. And the reason I tell you all this is because to me, right, I said I work in IT. I'm passionate that computers and technology should be accessible to people in the same way that I think the off-road community should be inclusive and accessible to people, right? And this show, my YouTube channel, my website are all driven by that, right? That's
Same.
what I want this show to be. I want this show to be a place for the off-road community, not necessarily businesses, sponsors, and vendors, but the people that make up this community. Now, that's not to say we're never going to talk to vendors, we're never going to have sponsors, we're never going to have, people that want to sell things on the show. But the bar I want to set is these people can't just be company X who has nothing to really do with the industry. They just want to sell us stuff, right? It's more like people who were passionate about the industry and because of that work in it, right? Or some fool we ran across on Instagram that has an interesting perspective on something, right? We want to have them on the show and talk to them, right? That's my vision for what this show is going to be. So, and Tammy, feel free to comment here. I like throw in whatever you want. I just went on a whole little monologue there.
No, I tend to agree with you, especially in the fact that when you're first getting into this, it can be very intimidating. I remember going to Roush Creek the first time, and my Jeep's this little itty bitty Jeep, and you got all these big built Jeeps, and I want people to feel welcome, to be able to ask. Like, some of my videos are like how to use your sway bar button, how to use your axle lock button, and some people laugh at me like, oh, I'm like, but you would be surprised at how many people have no clue. And I want people to feel safe here, comfortable here. We're not going to make fun of you. We're going to, we'll be very low tech. We'll be very high tech. We're going to be a wide variety. It's not just going to be about techie rock crawling stuff. It's not just going to be about whatever. It's going to be a wide variety of stuff. Camping tips, what's overlanding, how to get started into overlanding, what kind of suspension should I use? Should I use a 3-link or a 4-link, or just, it's going to be a wide variety of stuff, because Nate has experience and stuff that I don't, that he can share, and I have experience.
We both come from pretty varied backgrounds, as we just described, right?
Right. So I think it's just going to be like kind of a catch-all and everybody can join us. We may interview like that Instagram guy with the cool story, or we can interview some guy who came up with this cool invention for a thingamadoodle for your Jeep.
Right.
Or maybe we'll interview XYZ tire company because, they have some tires that are kind of cool.
Right. Right. So I think that's that in my brain, that's the bar. The bar is these can't just be people that are latching on to an industry because they think they can make money.
Correct.
I want people on this show because they're equally passionate about it as we are, or more passionate than we are. Because I'm sure there's people out there that are totally like just all in, right?
and we want to share what's happening in the industry.
Yes, right. And that's the other thing, right? We intend to cover news, and we have one article tonight if we have time for it, which we might. We got a few minutes left if we wrap this up. But yeah, that's kind of what I picture. I also, from a schedule perspective, I want to do this twice a month, right? That's kind of what we've agreed on. I think that might look like, so this is the third Monday of the month, right? I'm thinking like the first and third Monday. So that makes it easy for people to plan around. It's not like, oh, it's been 2 weeks. Is this the week they're on or not? Right. It'll be, easily plannable.
Right.
What else did I want to say?
Keep them to an hour.
Yeah.
Hour long.
Yeah. We're going to try to aim for an hour.
And we're going to record live video, and then Nate will, with his tech skills, because I can barely turn on a computer, he will do what he does to get it on the podcast places.
Yeah. So we're going to each live. We're going to be primarily, this is our focus, the live show, but I'm going to take the audio recordings and we'll release them as a traditional podcast so that anybody who wants to listen on their commute can just tune in and listen that way, right? So that means we're going to have to be careful not to put too many things in the stream that you have to see,
right?
Or those are going to have to get edited out for the audio only recording. So yeah, we hope that folks tune in live so we can have some interaction like we have tonight. This is, I mean, for the first night of a brand new show, I think it's great.
Right.
We've got, looks like 5 people watching at the moment, and
videos and
we've got people in chat. It's good. This is great. So yeah, I think that's all the housekeeping stuff that I wanted to go through. So we hope, and in my opinion, these things are not set in stone, right? We're going to iterate this as we go. We'll figure out, like,
we'll evolve.
Like this section of the show was dumb. Let's not do that again, right? Or this was great. Let's keep doing that, right? Maybe we'll change things up, whatever.
It's all like, this is not about the destination. It's about the journey. And you, as a off-roader, as a Jeeper, or as a overlander, you may have this plan. Something happens and you have to veer off that plan. And that's kind of what our podcast is going to be about. It's ever evolving.
Right. All right. So we've got a little bit of time left. You have a news article. I didn't have a chance to read it because you told me this as we were getting ready to go live.
I just happened to we were debating whether we were going to have news. We're going to try to do news in each podcast to keep you updated on happenings in the off-road community, the Jeep community. And this one is, kind of surprises me. Stellantis, who is Jeep now, Stellantis is Jeep, in case you didn't know.
They own Jeep, right?
They just came out with a surprising move. In dealers in 14 states are only going to be able to receive the Jeep Wrangler 4xe plug-in hybrid electric vehicle in their lots. So that means if you want to buy a Jeep Wrangler gas engine in 14 of these states, you're not going to be able to.
Trying to see if it tells us which states they are.
California, Colorado, Connecticut.
Surprise, Delaware, California.
Really? Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, and Washington, D.C. And this is all because this decision was prompted by emission standards adopted by the California Air Resource Board. And it's going to create challenges for dealers who are already grappling with the part shortages. And by the way, for my little short stint in Minnesota, I was working for a Jeep dealer in the parts department, and it was a serious issue, the parts shortages during the whole pandemic. Anyway,
supply chain problems were a big deal during the pandemic. And you know, I have really mixed opinions about electric vehicles. The technology side of me thinks they're not a terrible idea. However, they're also not ready. I don't think the infrastructure in the country,
no, definitely not,
or even the manufacturing facilities are ready to really give us a production grade fully electric vehicle, right? It's cool that they're trying, right? Like the efforts from Tesla and whatever, they're neat. It's good that people who want to buy them can go get their hands on them and try them out, right? You shouldn't be that dude that goes and unplugs the hybrid, the cars that are charging in the parking lot because you don't like them. Don't do that. You're just an asshole if you do that. But I don't think they're ready to be. I don't think they are. Technology goes in like waves, right? There's a thing that's brand new and it's very expensive. It doesn't quite work right? And then the enthusiasts buy that, and they tinker with it. And then as the enthusiasts buy it, it gets better and better and better, and then it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and then it's ready for the average public, right?
We're not to that point yet.
Electric cars are still at that enthusiast level, in my opinion. Right? There's a certain breaking point where when you get past that, then battery technology is where it needs to be, charging infrastructure is where it needs to be, right? And the government forcing them on us is not the way to get that done.
No.
Especially when there's so many people in this country that can barely afford to live.
Correct.
Right? Like,
these cars are expensive.
They're not cheap. And when I work from home now, but when I used to commute to work, I had an hour each way, right? And I thought about an electric vehicle then. And I work in IT, right? This is a white collar job. I don't make like I'm not trying to like gloat, but I make a decent salary, right? And I looked at the prices of electric vehicles, and it was just out of the question, completely out of the question. They're so
Right.
freaking expensive. And then you get so many miles of range. How do you drive cross country on an electric vehicle?
Well, my
How do I
son,
tow my Jeep
yeah,
with an electric vehicle? Right? I can't.
you
It just
can't.
the technology isn't there yet.
And
Sorry,
here
a
in
little bit of a
Wyoming,
rant for me.
here in Wyoming, you would not be able to make it from point A to point B because there's not enough charging stations. So you would
Right.
not be able to tour Wyoming in your electric vehicle. My son bought a Tesla because he's a 20-something-year-old kid and he has, disposable income. And it's really cool. I've been in it. It's really cool. The self-driving. It has saved him from getting in accidents because in DC you're on all those busy highways and the Tesla
Mhm.
can see cars
Yeah.
coming behind you that
Yeah.
you can't see. So that
Yeah.
aspect I like. But he had to drive it to Charleston to visit his grandmother, and you have to plan, and it does the planning for you.
Yeah.
The vehicle does, but
Right.
you're sitting at these charging stations waiting to charge up your vehicle for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a charging station at the house. So it would, to charge his Tesla up just by the regular plug, it would take a week. So he
Yeah.
has to go to the charging stations in various spots around the city. It's not like it's just right down the street. So
Right.
it takes a lot of planning and they are expensive, and don't ever push the ludicrous mode. It's like taking off in a roller coaster. It's those
Well, so
things.
that's the side of electric vehicles that I think is really neat, right?
Oh,
It
I almost
takes
threw up.
it takes everything that we've known about the physics of a car and just it hits the reset button. Everything's different now because you don't need to depend on RPMs and clutches and all kind and like gasoline and how much octane you've got and all those things that go from literal explosions to torque to wheels, right? Like we've spent a century learning all that, right? And I think honestly, I think that's why a lot of people don't want electric vehicles because they're afraid of that change, right?
People don't like change.
But I won't go into that, right? But imagine an off-road vehicle where every tire has its own independent electric motor, right? And you can do things like lock up this tire, pivot on that one, send power to these two and not the ones in the back, right? It's like all the stuff we've been doing with selectable lockers and cutting brakes and all that stuff, except completely independent of each other. I think that is a really cool future for this industry. But we're not there yet.
No.
Right? We just aren't there yet.
No. Definitely not. It'll take a while. So I guess if you want a gas vehicle, a gas Jeep, you're going to have to find a dealer in another state if you're one of those states. And are we going to have show notes? We're going to post show notes, or we'll put these links. We have a Facebook page. Go follow us on our Facebook page, right? We have a Facebook page, right?
I don't think we made it yet.
For the
moment, offroadinsiders.com is where you'll find this stuff.
Okay.
But yes, we will make social media pages. We were going to do that, and then I think we didn't.
I think we got life got in the way. I can't remember if we did or not. But
go
to our website.
Did the Oregon Trail or something. So
yeah, I think I was out with the cows. But yeah, offroadinsiders.com. Is it off-road one word?
It's all one word. Off-road insiders, all one word.
There's no
we didn't put any dashes in there.
Yeah. So go there. Make sure on YouTube you click subscribe and the little bell, because you'll be notified when we have these videos or when we post.
Yep.
And then just go to our website and we'll update our social media so you can follow us and share with your friends. Let them know.
Yeah.
Let them know we're here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
if you have any ideas, let us know. And we're at an hour, Nate.
We just hit an hour.
I'll shut up now.
This worked out. No, you're telling them how to subscribe. That's perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So yes, make sure you subscribe so that you'll know when we go live. We'll probably have these scheduled a little bit in advance so you have an idea when we're going to go live and what the topic's going to be. We said we were going to have the topic for next show planned before we went live, and then we didn't do that.
Oh,
we'll have to do that.
Yeah.
It'll be, another off-roady thing. We'll talk about off-roady stuff.
Yeah, we'll think of something. We were going to be planners.
Yeah. Well, next time. There's always next time.
We'll have that next time. I'll make notes.
Yep. All right, folks. So this has been fun. We will see you again. What's the date? I should have looked that up too.
July 3rd.
July 3rd. Now's when we start running into holidays, and we're like, wait, are we going to be able to do that? We should.
I will be in town because I have to work that day. We don't have that day off, so
yeah, we should be able to hit the 3rd. The 4th might be tough.
Yeah, the 4th is Tuesday, so the 3rd is a Monday.
Well, good. All right, so thank you, folks, for tuning in live. Anyone, if you're listening to us audio only, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again in roughly 2 weeks on the 3rd.
Happy trails.
Have a good one.